Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming, and boy do I have a long as shit creepypasta for you all today. This creepypasta is called antisonic.dll, and it's long, and it basically focuses on an audio recording transcript that there are people that are actually, that they discover, and they analyze it to see if it has any issues and whatnot, and, safe to say it's a very decent creepypasta. It's long as hell though. I'll actually be including their analysis notes on the screen. I'll just post them up as I read them, so just to let you know what's going on there. But with that being said, let's begin antisonic.dll. The following text is a transcription and summary of a downloadable audio file found on a website that was said to be available to the public for the course of 3 days, before being taken down by an unknown cause. Any trace of the site has been removed entirely. This has naturally led to extreme doubt and near instant dismissal at first, that the site simply never existed. However, upon hearing the file's contents, the possibility of a missing person, or persons, was raised, as well as certain other curiosities. The file is an MP3 that contains an audio recording featuring almost 26 minutes of narration, by an individual apparently named Chris Lawrence. The very nature of what he speaks of throughout this recording seems extremely detached from reality, as if he is experiencing intense hallucinations. Topics mentioned are regarding 1. Sonic.exe, including a detailed description of how it inflicts damage, or some kind of influence on certain individuals' minds, yet with the exception of one particular section regarding a statement about the deaths of several people. The narrator seems almost completely calm and collected. There are no signs of a psychotic breakdown or any kind of high stress levels in his voice. The exception mentioned involves the narrator becoming angry on the subject of fan-made creations, being both responsible for people's deaths as well as falling victims themselves. Throughout the recording can be heard several ambient noises of a disturbing nature, suspected of being placed in order to mask the location of the individuals. These sounds are also very convincingly mixed to give the impression they are moving around in the distance. Authorities have currently ceased any and all investigation into this matter, as it is now officially considered to be a cold case with too many uncertainties and no solid evidence. One other file was received along with the MP3, a .pdf, that was at first believed to be corrupted, until an analysis showed it was an encrypted image that needed to be rearranged somehow. Only just over 65% of it was corrupt beyond recovery. After putting together what was salvageable, the result was a bizarrely fragmented image, containing what is believed to be the narrator himself along with several of his personal details. Both are largely obscured due to the corrupted sections that after assembly, that clearly spell the words, "I'm listening," presented in all caps with a pixelated mixture of crimson, black, blue, and red. What can be made of the individuals? Details include the majority of his name, along with 11 stray letters of various details such as address, date of birth, and occupation. The other noteworthy detail of these stray letters is that they spell the words "stop killing," and are also placed in the right order, littered throughout the overlaying sentence. This occurrence, whatever managed to corrupt the image, was unsuccessful in covering those specific areas. The individual appears to be of average height and build, standing straight with long blonde hair just past shoulder length. His face cannot be seen due to that part of the image being corrupted. He is wearing what looks to be nothing more than a simple set of jeans and a midnight blue shirt underneath a black hooded top, carrying what is questionably a set of firearms, consisting of what can be recognized as a Desert Eagle on the right hip, a Glock 17 on the left, and both a Remington 870 pump-action shotgun and an XM8 assault rifle on his back. Each firearm has a strange visual effect of being covered in some kind of dense, swirling fog. The fog itself is a mixture of gray, black, purple, and teal, and is wrapped tightly around the shape of the firearm. Strangely though, no holsters are present for this equipment. Also are 2 other unidentifiable items attached to the outer side of both his legs. Whether these are weapons or not is certain, as there is too much of the image obscured to tell. Very little else can be said about this image, other than what can be made out of a background behind him. It suggests scenery that was either visually altered in several ways, resulting in a series of twisted and disturbing shapes that are colored with a blur of black, mauve, and various shades of blue that share no similarity to any scenery currently known of in the world. Certain factors such as the date of upload, details of any location allegedly involved in it, as well as both the name and other contents, will not be included to prevent investigation from any further outside source. The recording begins with a sound that resembles an audio jack being plugged into an unstable or defective socket of some kind, before switching to an ambiance of what has a resemblance to both howling and cries of pain. that upon first impressions have been tweaked with audio software and is at a low volume. After approximately 3 seconds, there is a voice of a male with a British accent, estimated to be in his mid to late 20s. This is where the audio transcription begins. My name is Chris Lawrence, and I have a warning for anyone who's now hearing this. Whether you like horror or not, you'd best hear this. You need to know, and if you were involved with what has now caused more damage than you could imagine, that means fanfics, artworks, and constant attention to something that was never meant to be messed around with. You have a lot to answer for. You just love playing around with these concepts, like all other popular things turn into memes. And you feel you can just take an order to help it grow for your own sick little No point in going in there until you know why I'm here and what I'm talking about. I never imagined doing something like, I don't know, what is this, a podcast? Whatever you want to call this thing. I don't want anything other than some of your time, if that's okay with you. The pieces of the picture I'm here to tell you about are pretty big within themselves, but hopefully you'll just see it's all bad. In the end, though, I just want you to listen more than anything. I'd best get to the point, right? Before I confuse you any further. You could say this all began when I was checking stuff on YouTube one night. I was watching some top 10 video on creepy moments in gaming, and after seeing this one game in particular, I got a bit curious. Well, I say curious, but I'm pretty sure at this point I actually controlled on some level. I'm sure that's how it works. I guess you could say that I have my own reasons for regretting the day I heard the name Sonic.exe, or anything about it on the matter. Even then, I don't actually think regret would be the word of my choice. So, if anyone just stopped listening, fine. Maybe it's nice to say, stay ignorant. That is, until they might come across my kind of problems. But to anyone who's still here, you want to hear what I have to say. If you really want to know about this, and if you'll just understand or even believe that I'm trying to stop what follows in this thing's wake for real, then you will just stay the hell away from it. There's a lot to wrap your head around. I don't even know where to begin. I guess carrying on about how I first got exposed myself or got exposed would be a good start. So I mentioned a list of creepy stuff in games, and this had me interested. I heard a couple of things about what it was, and some research followed. Research usually leads to something with a download link, but like I said, this was more than just fascination. I was being compelled without knowing it. And the more I think of it, the more I'm certain I was being called to since I first saw him. All that aside for a second, I succeeded in getting the game and went through it. The version I got was just a replication of the original though, extra stuff in it, but most importantly, it wasn't the actual thing. Now if by chance you haven't seen what this thing is, it's basically the first Sonic game if it was done by Wes Craven on an especially bad day. I gotta say, as freaky as it must be for some people and that don't have the stomach for horror, and maybe even a few that do, it couldn't go unexplored forever. Violence is everywhere you look and all that, am I right? Seeing the characters after they were caught is what I remember most clearly, that and the face at the end. There were a couple of details that were a little off from what I saw in any vid. It's easy to say there's something about the eyes, but in this case, there really was something about the eyes, the pupils. They were darker than I saw beforehand, and that was in my monitor. But the really weird part was when I must have looked away for a second and back again. This time they were really bright, and it made his eyes look bigger. Oh yeah, and there was one other thing I had to mention, no feeling of fear, only interest. I obviously thought nothing of it back then. But now that I've had time to look back on all those points where I should have been afraid, it's amazing how much of an effect it has, and how much attention you don't pay. I felt I just had to find out anything else I could about it. I wanted to find the original version, didn't even know why. I do now, of course. But at the time, like I said, totally oblivious. But there was something in that moment that definitely signified things really starting. Shortly after that, Steam told me that someone named Gamma had added me as a friend. Curiosity got me, of course. I opened the chat to say hi, but without anything saying they were typing, they said hi first, and this person knew my name. I did feel a bit weirded out by that. I mean, it could have just been someone I already knew who found me on here. But I just played through that game, so I already had far-fetched ideas going through my head. I asked them how they knew me, and the response was a little strange at the least. At the most, it was just detached and insane. This person started going on about how I'd caught his attention and that they wanted to take me back to the beginning. I stopped soon after that, but I had the life scared out of me. by laughter coming through my headphones. It was loud, made me smack them off of my head, and yeah, it was the same laughter I heard in the game. I checked to see if it was still up there. It was still up. Nothing was there, though. Then something came up in the chat and caught my eye again. The words, "Gamma is now deceased." Yep, you did just hear that from me. It might be that I haven't paid much attention, but I'm pretty sure Steam doesn't show that one. It gets better, though. It switched to "Gamma is now mine." A link came up and just said "the beginning." I didn't click on it, but my PC just started downloading the game anyways, and it wouldn't cancel. Kinda makes me wonder what the point of the link was if it just did that. Anyways, it was done in a few seconds, and got put on my desktop in even less time. And then, except for the chat window and a brand new desktop icon, nothing. I would have believed this was someone who's good with coding and able to play a not-so-funny joke on me, but after everything else, you know what I was thinking, and you're probably thinking it too. Well, we both got proven right, very quickly. The screen went dead, and I heard something like scratching. Then slice marks started etching themselves into the screen. No, not a vid or anything, I mean actual scratches. My monitor was being ripped up in front of me. The screen was getting twisted up where it was cut. It was buckling and curling outwards, and underneath was something that looked like living tissue. There were words appearing, but I also heard something over the sound of the screen being destroyed, and it was coming from my headphones. Like a genius, I grabbed them to listen in. It was like several screams at once, only they were really distorted, quiet at first, but getting clearly louder. As more of it appeared, it was like I was hearing stuff from somewhere really nasty. Heard the laughter again, a lot louder than before, pretty much deafening actually. Only this time, it didn't come from the PC. It was more like something behind me. And then, complete silence. When it stopped, the words were in all caps saying, "I'm listening." My brain had a hard time with all this at first. I dropped the headphones and checked outside the door, only to see nothing there. Not only that, but when I looked back at my monitor, nothing. No scratches, just a blank screen. Now this is what got me thinking about the whole control thing to begin with. And I still wouldn't know if it wasn't pointed out to me. I doubted my own sanity, but only for a few moments. After that, I didn't have any problem with going near the PC, even after what I'd just witnessed. There was no fear towards it, but no curiosity this time. Didn't seem important back then, of course, but I probably should mention it now. Anyways, the PC was still running and the monitor was just fine. First thing I did was check Steam. No one named Gamma or anyone saying I've ever met him, except for the new game I had. Everything looked normal again. I do remember it having a new icon though, just those eyes with the blood trickling down underneath. Quite a sharp resolution too. I kept thinking on and off that I just imagined all of it. No one else in the house was kicking my door off its hinges because of the noise, but believe me, it felt so real. In the end, I was still unsure, but then I stopped thinking about that, because a very strange feeling started creeping up on me. It was like I wanted to sleep, but not because I was tired. It was more a sense of just not wanting to be awake anymore. No kind of depression or anything, but it just didn't feel like me. I just fell asleep like it didn't happen. Shouldn't have. I was shown the events of the game again, and it was almost exactly the same. One thing was changed. The look. There was almost nothing cartoony about it. Everything looked so grim and real. Imagine someone putting all these characters in places through Photoshop or something, then making them just a bit off of a human's height. Seeing them from what perspective for the first time. You've seen them in games, but in the flesh, as it were. The eyes were almost as big, though, so you might have found it a bit creepy. Some probably wouldn't even care because it's Sonic, but I cared, and I wanted to stop it, but couldn't on account of being locked in a room, being made to watch through a window. I never did get shown what he did to those poor guys. I only heard the screams and then static. I should point out, though, they weren't the screams you get in the game. They were fitting for each character. What I did get after all of it, though, was the freak busting through the window after he was done, growling something about suffering being a part of who I am. Can't remember the exact words, although the words I do remember was him yelling at me to wake up. I did just that in one hell of a hurry. Didn't even get much sleep. As I was sitting on the edge of my bed, I could have sworn I was still dreaming when I saw what was on my monitor. But I wasn't, unfortunately. It looked like a video clip of the freak. But he looked as real as he was in the dream. His eyes were completely fixed on me. Also, seeing as you know who I'm talking about, let's go with a pet name like Freakazoid. I'll come up with something demeaning for him later. You don't really have a clue who or what he is, but you know what he looks like. And you may think you know what he does, but you don't. You really don't. It was a dark background, so I could barely see anything other than him, but I could just about make out something like a crimson sky, and there was some kind of shapes dancing and twisting around in the distance, like they were something that was alive. After a few seconds, I realized this wasn't a video clip, no loop. Freakazoid was actually staring at me with a toned-down smile on his face. That feeling hit me again, only this time it was more like needing to do just one more thing before you go to sleep. You know, like 5 more minutes on a game or one more vid to watch. I actually felt I needed to get to him, no trace of common sense at all. The desktop came up by itself, but the background was still the same thing, until he started looking at the game. The screen went a bit strange after that, giving a split second of red static here and there. The mouse cursor flew about all over the screen as well. It all stopped with the cursor being right next to the icon. My hand just went to the headphones, then the keyboard and mouse. I clicked on it, and it was just like before, without the updated look, the music, scenery, murders, the words, the characters, and the way they got locked out when they died. There was just one small detail you might want to know about. My hands were stuck to the keyboard and mouse. No, I didn't mean I needed to keep my hands on them. I mean I tried to remove them, and it was like everything was stuck to the desk, except that I was able to slide the mouse around. I played through the end, seeing the same ending. 3 rounds of static, followed by that laughing. Then there was another round of static. The picture stayed the same, but now it said, "What are you?" Yet another round of static, and right, okay. I don't know if this is even going to work, and don't ask me how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. Audio undergoes a second of strange interference before cutting to approximately half a second of static. The transition is followed by what can be heard as wind blowing, as if the recording was made in an outside environment. This consistently remains for the rest of the segment. 4 seconds in, there is a voice of a male with a slightly diluted American accent. Males' voices would appear to be a heavily modified voiceover, including a substantially low tone from a pitch shifter. However, there is no sign of tampering of any kind through except of the beginning and the end of the segment, visible or otherwise. First visible sign of tampering throughout the entire recording to this point, implying a crude yet unknown transition from the recording to the current segment. Indications show that the segment was placed into the recording during the process itself, without the aid of another audio device. Having fun? I hope so. I hope you enjoyed watching all those sealed fates, and you knew they were sealed. You knew what was going to happen in them, and yet you just watched. Although you did more than just watch, didn't you? You took control of them, led them to me, gave them up. You are as responsible for their deaths as I am, Chris. There's something about you, something I can see. I wish to take a closer look at you. Let's talk in private, shall we? Background effects are added, and is what appears to be a modified sound clip of screaming in a room that carries an echo. This loops throughout the rest of the segment. Several more screams are introduced into the background, all of which have been determined as a mixture of clips that have been traced to several sound archives, TV shows, videos from such sites as YouTube and video games. A high-powered device of some kind is heard charging up. This particular effect has a strong tremolo effect mixed in, but does not share any kind of resemblance to any known device or form of media. The audio cuts back with the same transition described at the beginning of this current segment. Okay, what you hopefully just heard, that was his voice. What he said to me, I know, it doesn't really add up that I'd have to show you. But I did just show you, I hope. What happened after that, well, all I really remember is a screen flashing and hurting my eyes, but he was moving with every second of it. The last thing I remember was a shot of his whole body standing straight with his arms stretched out in front, and he had the same look on his face from before. Then everything, and I mean my actual vision, went completely red, and then to black. Next thing I know, I woke up. Well, let's just say somewhere else. I can't tell you because I don't know. Quite a few things have happened since then, my own adventures through this, but I've already drivelled on for what must be half an hour now. Besides, there's another important part you need to hear. I don't know how long has passed since I first got into whatever this is, but the things I've seen, I don't know what this place is, if it's just a dream or if I'm hallucinating and in reality. I'm strapped down to a bed in a mental hospital or something, or indeed, if this is some kind of place beyond your imagination, or your nightmares. I know it sounds completely insane what I'm saying, but I don't know what else to say. I would try explaining how things work and the sights you get here, but I don't think I have the words to describe that. I can tell you something I have seen though: bodies, a lot of brutality and murder. There have been characters either from the game or I'm guessing made by any of you, since I don't recognize any of them. They get chased down before they just disappear until he's done with them, and then there's the human victims that he chooses. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I'm talking about real people here. These people went through the same things as me, only they weren't so lucky. They didn't have what I got. And they weren't saved and given the chance to even survive, much less fight back. And it's your fault. Yes, you keep conjuring up these little pieces of fiction, artwork, and further proof of his existence. It's because of you that a place like this exists. All of those characters that you keep creating, they get about 5 minutes of life in this hellhole before their remains, as well as the people he chose to drag in here, get left for me and others to find. And you continue to just bury us in this? And if you say, but I played it and nothing happened, then he found you lacking, not worth his attention. But do you have to give him the reign of terror that he has? Why can't you draw him getting his face kicked in for a change? Why don't you just give us a break already? You have to stop indulging these things' power. Believe me, once again, I know it's completely insane what I'm saying. And the little evidence I have of words and an apparent recording, I'm not even sure you got to hear, isn't much to go on. I should imagine you'd even question how I got that. Well, I just have it. That's all I've got for you. And if you've listened to this point, then there must be some part of you that's convinced. Whatever all this started off as, it must have grown, it's evolved, and it's refined itself. Even though you wouldn't know from looking at this place, either that, or it's always been there. I just needed something to give it a shape. I don't know. Something I am sure of, though, is also the reason I'm doing this. And that is, I'm here to tell you, you have to stop feeding him, if not for our sake, or the sake of anyone else here, then for your own. I can't say what he looks for when he goes after someone. He's very picky, leaving so many alone. Yet there will always be those few that spark his interest. And if you believe me, then I'll make you a deal. If you leave this thing alone, then we'll fight this in peace, and stop it from spreading. He can't be killed, but he can be subdued. And if you don't believe me, but you're still listening, just think about it. That's all I ask. I'm not asking for you to spread the word or stop making any of these characters. And I'm not saying destroy what there is to already see. You can't destroy it. There will always be a copy of this stuff somewhere in the world, and even then, I doubt he'd let this place end in such a way. After being here for as long as I have, I feel that even these characters would have given life to, in some way or another, have the right to exist. And you people don't deserve to die, would you agree? Just stop giving this creature the power it keeps using on us. Leave this one alone. He is extremely dangerous and just might choose you next. I'm literally the only living human being I've come across here, so what the hell would your chances be? The only reason I've survived here is because something wanted us here, and because we're probably just as much of a freak as he is in some ways. I know what I ask is a lot, and maybe it's even impossible. It's a fact. There's a part of you that's hardwired to respond to violence. You may take offense in that, but it's the goddamn truth. Think about it. So many of you see what all these forms of media have to give you. You play games to feel strong. You watch films to escape from yourself. And when you see the news, you say, oh my, how tragic. Yet you keep on fucking watching. Just as long as it isn't happening to you. That's not some sick psycho you have keeping locked up inside you. That's just human nature, ever since the start. I think the reason I survived this might be because I try to stop the horror rather than watching it from behind a monitor or TV. I've survived and I'm still fighting back, even though this is a dark, brutal place where no one was meant to live. But there is some life here. There's a lot of enemies, but there's no allies. Make whatever judgment you see fit about what I told you. It's not like it should matter to me anymore, but if this is some kind of home for Sonic.exe, then we are the anti-Sonic.dll. And we'll continue being a thorn in that fucker's side until our last breath. You have been warned, so if you're still stupid enough to put yourself in this much danger, it's at your own risk. The following segment is mostly inaudible due to the unexpected interference mixed with a distorted scream that resides for approximately 4 seconds. The sound clip has been cut up and rearranged. What follows is pitches of static that continue until the end of the recording. One or two other notable points is the sudden presence two distinctly different voices. This is most likely explanation for the transition between tenses I and we. The second voice, that of a male with an American accent. Second point is what appears to be a distorted cries, making their way from a distance to what is assumed to be the narrator's location, as well as a low presence of a deep-toned male's laughter. The voice has a resemblance to that of an individual heard in an earlier segment. Second visible sign of tampering throughout entire recording indicates what has been determined as a powerful type of jamming signal, theoretically designed to overwhelm the output of any electrical device. The results seem to be that it renders the device inoperable. The evidence suggests that there is a delay between the signal's impact and its effect. All known jamming tech available does not possess the specific properties of this signal. Narrator found. Unknown. Surprised it. Narrator. Not my fault. Drag it. Unknown. Agree? Here? Narrator. We ha. Other choice. Hope. To know. Said. We fight alone in peace. Unknown. Amen here. The static continues on. What can be heard as several as of yet unidentifiable creatures, followed by what is believed to be gunfire from at least 5 different sources, accompanied by shouting from the narrators, along with 3 extra voices. The first 2 are American accents belonging to both a female and a male. The third is that of another British male, and there are also sounds implying further use of tools that cause projectiles of some kind of lethal force with high impact. Whatever these tools are, weapons cannot be determined. Although it is likely, all mentioned factors take place over approximately the last 8 seconds. Unknown now. Narrator, I'm trying. He or us. Unknown number 3. Look out. Narrator, Ofa. A struggle takes place between the narrator and what is believed to be one of the apparent creatures from which the cry originates from. The gunfire continues, almost remaining consistent throughout. The recording ends with a sound in the opening description, only it is now more like the jack being removed. Based on the loose assumption that this is not a mere hoax, it is unknown whether or not the persons responsible for this file uploaded survived the incident. File has been all but dismissed as a hoax due to the lack of concrete evidence, including such elements as the sound clips found in already existing forms of media. Also note is that there is never, although there is or never has been anyone by the name of Chris Lawrence or any individual having his personal details filed under missing persons. Neither has there been anyone having taken up residence or even connected to anywhere near the area of alleged disappearance. To prove this further, locals in the area connected claim to have never heard of such a person. My God, was that long? What is this, the longest episode of Haunted Gaming or what? Anyways, let's wrap this up quickly, right? Now, as far as cliches go, nothing really spotted, to be honest, and even if they were present, no mood would be killed. The extension naming, for example, .dll or .exe or .lol could be considered a cliche, and it is kind of a turn-off since file extension creepypasta tend to have a stigmatism to them nowadays, but that's not the point, and this is a good file extension creepypasta, but if we had to bring up a cliche, that's where it would be. Now, for some reason in my head, I keep comparing this to Funny Mouth. Maybe because of that Steam chat or the crazy shit that happens to the player themselves as audio recording goes on, even though in Funny Mouth there isn't an audio recording, but whatever. I guess the way it's told or narrated, and even the dream sequences too, that's a big one. It feels a lot like Funny Mouth, and in a good way, because both these creepypastas are very good. Now, this was genuinely interesting, and it didn't resort to, things like demonic presences, like some creepypastas do, and it has a unique sort of concept in which anything related to Sonic, or the Beast in this game, is dead, or is being put through torture, it dies. And our constant curiosity gives it this power, sort of how in real life the only reason Sonic.exe is really popular is because we keep talking about it, making videos on it, playing games, that it helps create. Hell, we're giving it power right now. It's an interesting concept and honestly makes you wonder for a second time, the next time you load up Sonic.exe and give it a playthrough, maybe it might just end up sucking you in. But not really, let's be realistic here. But really, I think it's a good creepypasta, although the only thing I really have against it at times is it feels somewhat convoluted. And I guess the length of the creepypasta has to do with it, and the amount of information that constantly gets thrown at you. I think it could have been a tad shorter, and it could have been easier to understand for some people if it was if it was a little shorter and just it got to the point a little more quicker. But that's not that big of an issue, Hell, you'd be sitting here for a while if this was Happy Appy or Godzilla NES, so consider this a very, very short creepypasta compared to those two. And that's really all I have to say about it. It's got a unique concept, creeps you out, and intrigues you as you read further and further. It just gets a tad convoluted and lengthy, but that's not an issue. I mean, this is a creepypasta you sort of have to read another time too to really sort of seep in all the stuff from it too. But in the end, what would you rate this creepypasta, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.